The eviction notice flapped against the wall like a white flag of surrender. But she wasn't surrendering. She stood there in the hallway with her life packed into 3 cardboard boxes and a single black suitcase. Her chin lifted in quiet defiance, as if pride alone could hold the roof over her head. I had walked out to grab my mail, expecting nothing more dramatic than bills and junk flyers, and instead I found my neighbor staring at the end of her world. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act can change a life, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us who we can be when it matters most. Her name was Elena. She had moved in 6 months earlier. Quiet and polite, the kind of person who watered the hallway plants when no one was looking. We had exchanged smiles, occasional small talk about the weather, and once I had helped her carry groceries up the stairs when the elevator was broken. That was the extent of it. She was a neighbor, not a friend, a familiar face, not someone whose life should suddenly collide with mine. There she was, standing in front of her apartment door with a notice that might as well have read, "You're on your own." The landlord lingered awkwardly a few feet away, holding a ring of keys. He wasn't cruel, just detached. Rent hadn't been paid in 2 months. Rules were rules. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner, and everything felt painfully ordinary for a moment that was anything but. I watched as Elena raised her hand, palm outward, when the landlord extended the keys toward her one last time, as if the gesture itself was an insult. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She looked tired in a way that went beyond sleep, like someone who had been fighting invisible battles for too long. After the landlord left, the silence in the hallway was suffocating. She crouched down and pressed her forehead briefly against one of the boxes, breathing in slowly. I should have walked back into my apartment. I should have minded my own business. That's what most of us do when someone else's storm starts spilling into our sunshine. Instead, I heard myself speak before I had fully decided to. I told her to move in with me. The words hung between us, reckless and impossible. She let out a short, humorless laugh and said it wasn't funny. Her eyes searched my face for a smirk, for any sign that I was mocking her situation. She found none. I wasn't joking. I wasn't even entirely sure what I was doing, but I knew I couldn't walk away. I lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment across the hall. The second room had become a storage space filled with old gym equipment and unopened boxers from a life I had fully unpacked after my divorce. It was easier to let that room stay cluttered than to confront the emptiness it represented. But suddenly that room felt like an opportunity. Elena shook her head at first. Pride is a powerful thing. Accepting help can feel more humiliating than sleeping in a car. She insisted she would figure something out. Maybe stay with a friend. Maybe find a cheap motel. But as she said it, her voice wavered. There was no friend. There was no plan. I walked to my apartment, opened the door, and turned on the lights. I pulled the spare room door open wide so she could see it from the hallway. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean. It was safe. I told her she wouldn't owe me anything. Just time to get back on her feet. She stood there for a long moment, weighing dignity against survival. Then her shoulders sagged in quiet surrender. Not to defeat, but to the possibility that someone actually meant what they said. That first night was awkward. We moved her boxers into my apartment in near silence. I cleared out the spare room while she stood uncertainly in the doorway. There's something deeply vulnerable about watching a stranger rearrange their life to make space for you. It's both beautiful and terrifying. Over the next few days, I've learned more about Elena than I had in 6 months of being neighbors. She had worked at a small marketing firm that downsized unexpectedly. Severance had barely covered a few weeks. She'd been too embarrassed to tell anyone how bad it had gotten. She had sold her jewelry, cut every unnecessary expense, and skipped meals more than once to stretch what little she had. When the second rent payment bounced, the eviction process moved quickly. Meanwhile, I was fighting my own quiet battles. My divorce had left me guarded, hesitant to open my life to anyone again. Trust had become a fragile thing. Letting Elena move in wasn't just about offering a room. It was about risking emotional proximity, about inviting chaos into a carefully controlled existence. We established simple boundaries. She would look for work full-time. She would contribute to groceries once she could. We would respect each other's space. It felt transactional on paper, but in practice, something warmer began to form. I noticed small things. She cleaned the kitchen before I woke up. She folded laundry I had left in the dryer. She brought home discounted flowers one evening and placed them on the dining table, apologizing for not being able to contribute more. The apartment began to feel less like a temporary shelter and more like a home shared by 2 people trying to rebuild. But it wasn't all smooth. There were moments of tension. One evening, I came home, exhausted from work, to find her crying quietly in the living room after another job rejection. I felt helpless, unsure whether comfort would be welcome or intrusive. Another time, I caught myself resenting the loss of solitude, the way the television wasn't always tuned to my preferences, the way the bathroom light was sometimes left on. Helping someone doesn't erase your own flaws, it magnifies them. The real turning point came about a month later. I returned home to find her sitting at the table, an email open on her laptop, hands trembling. She had been offered a position at a startup across town. It wasn't glamorous, and it paid less than her previous job, but it was a beginning. She didn't scream or jump. She just exhaled as if she had been holding her breath for weeks. I realized then that the offer of a room had been more than shelter. It had been oxygen. As she started working again, the energy in the apartment shifted. She left early, came home tired but hopeful. She insisted on paying a small portion of rent despite my protests. The spare room slowly transformed from a temporary refuge into a carefully arranged space with framed photos and neatly stacked books. One evening we sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker on. She admitted that when I had told her to move in, she thought I was mocking her, that no one ever offers something so generous without expecting something in return. She had been wrong, but so had I. I thought I was saving her. In truth, we had been saving each other. Her presence forced me out of isolation. It reminded me that life doesn't have to be lived behind emotional barricades. The empty second bedroom, once a symbol of loss, had become a symbol of unexpected connection. Months passed, she regained her confidence. Her laughter returned fully, no longer cautious or subdued. Eventually she found a better paying role and began apartment hunting.